Hi, I'm Matthew Herzberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. This is your weekly shot in the arm for motivation, inspiration, and education when it comes to your success with myopia management, but not just myopia management today, because we're going to be talking about all of optometry. My guest for this episode is none other than Dr. Cary Herzberg. In addition to being my father, he is one of the trailblazers and pioneers of specialty care in optometry, specifically with computer vision, scleral lenses, and what he's known for best, myopia management. Dr. Cary Herzberg has been doing ortho-K for over 40 years. Patients come from all over the country and the world to see him. Cary, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Matt. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
looking forward to a great discussion.
Yeah, and we normally do our supporter episodes, but this topic that we have today, I think you brought this to me originally, and then I saw something in my normal life that kind of prompted this topic, and I want to get to it right away. But before we do, you can find more episodes like this at myopiamindset.com. If you want to support the podcast, myopiamindset.com. Supporters get extended versions of every episode. They get a bonus episode each and every month, and they get their episodes early. So if you love everything that we're doing here, consider supporting the podcast. Okay, Cary, with all that out of the way, because I'm dying to get into this topic.
I know.
You and I have been kind of tossing this back and forth. It's about optometry as a whole. Normally, you and I talk about specifically myopia management, orthokeratology, all of that in specialty care. But there's been this elephant in the room about optometry and all healthcare in general, if you really think about it. And the question that we're posing for this episode is, can optometrists survive in an insurance-dominated marketplace? And so what was the initial seeds of this topic for you? How did this come about?
Yeah, well, you go back in history. It used to be back in the day, you could take in the vision care plans and actually make a decent living out of it. I mean, I remember when it changed in the early 1990s, we were doing with the soft contact lenses they were fitting at the time, could actually make a nice profit on each patient. And then they slowly, to get more competitive, these plans, cut the allowance down for what they'd give you for the contacts. As soon as the allowance became something that you actually paid for the lens itself, there was no allowance. So, that didn't change the whole field, because it was, at the same time, back in the late 1980s, the American Optometric Association was telling all of us that you got to switch over from material charges to services. Mm-hmm. So you switch around. I remember we had a little bit of an issue with that. We did it, but the issue was that the prices didn't change, but then the patients got used to paying for our contact lens checkups and exams and things like that, instead of paying more for the materials. So both of those things happened at the same time. And it's been interesting because some of these vision care plans, I won't name any specific alphabetical letters here, but some of them were actually intended to support optometry. And in the beginning, they really did. But what happened was it became these big conglomerates that were more interested in the profit than they were for their members and how well their members were doing. And, in the name of competitiveness, they kept, cutting fees. As I understand it now, in a lot of many cases, optometrists are not making anything more than they made, 20 or 30 years ago from these plans, and that was not very good at all. So, it's something that has interested me for a long time, because the movement into specialty care, in a way, by many of our colleagues, is being done because of financial reasons, not because they want to do this specialty so much. And I can understand how that's happening. I can understand the reason, the rationale behind it. I would love to think that they will also get what we get out of that, the charge of helping people and doing it for the sake of your patients as well. But, there's no reason why you can't make a nice profit out of that. I'd hate to see them just focus on that because it's the profit center, instead of being that this is a great thing like myopia, a great thing to do for your patients. So about this time, I became very involved. I worked with Alan Glazier for a while with the two on LODs on Facebook. We were trying to get a model together that would help, help optometry survive, because the thing that you always look at with optometry is, the tuitions at schools don't go down. They keep going up. I mean, we get discounted fees, for these vision plans, but they have to pay full price at the tuitions, and our colleagues, the kids are coming out of school with, $250,000 in debt or more. And you just can't pay somebody $40 or $50 for an eye exam and expect that that's going to do it, because they, it's not right. So we got to the point of what do we do about these things? And there was a movement afoot to do. I was involved with it because of the specialty care part of it. That's where my the input came from. And it was basically, one was because I was so specialty care driven. I mean, my practice is basically 95% myopia, and the rest of it's sclerals and everything else. So I don't do a lot of, what I call mainstream optometry, which is a lot of that you see out there today. And so I felt like, could we get more doctors interested in doing this? Because in the development of a specialty care practice, you actually develop a stream of income that's not dependent on vision care plans. It's a very important thing. It's almost like concierge optometry in a way, because people actually come and seek you out because you're offering these kinds of things. And I have specific ideas on how to do this in the field, and I'm glad to have an opportunity today to talk about some of those things.
So, the other part of it for me too is that, I have done consulting, and in my consulting, I have been in practices where the optometrist has 15, 20 minutes to be with a patient, and their schedule is stacked. When I would go into a practice to, like sell an ortho-K lens, for instance, or do some consulting, and the optometrist was like a scared animal who was just like looking around over their shoulder, just scared to death that somebody was going to throw another patient at them. Conversations were like so quick, usually over lunch, like eating as fast as possible. And when I would try to talk about specialty care, orthokeratology, or whatever, myopia management, it was like, I don't have time for that. I can't do that. I can't spend that much time with the patient.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. It's tough to get off inertia, to get to the point where you try the unknown. It's scary. And even though you need to change, right? Change can be scary. And so they would rather live in the hell that they're in, the place that they're in, which is being burned out, and eventually takes its toll, because it's going to take its toll. You can't get enough vacations from this. It's just going to burn you out, or else you'd make the change. And the change is scary for the reasons that you even illustrated. We lost like 80% of our patients when we dropped vision care plans, right?
Yeah.
A very scary place. The reason why we survived was because I had a specialty care practice. When we did that, to give you a little background, when we dropped the vision care plans, most of our revenues were, I was over 80% vision care plans at the time. And talk about a scary place with that. So I had been developing on the side an ortho-K myopia specialty, so it turns out that less than 20% of the practice actually was generating like 80% of the revenue because you weren't making any money off the vision care plans. So in effect, dropping that, reduced our patient load dramatically. We had 2 doctors working that were booked out over a month and a half each. And suddenly we had one doctor was adequate on location to see the patients. That's kind of thing that happens, because you're not seeing the volume of patients anymore. And so, but the reality was that, yes, it took some, a year or two of pains and growth pains and that, but it worked beautifully to the point then that, heck, later on, I was taking a third of my time off of practice, still making as much revenue as anybody else out there practicing, to making, really nice living out of it. Taking a third of the year off to go around the world teaching doctors how to do the myopia ortho-K thing, and not seeing any, and patients would wait for me to come back, to see me. Because why? Because we were doing something totally most people don't do. Most of our colleagues don't do. And so certainly, this is a path, I think, forward for many of the colleagues, but it's not for everybody. And it's definitely, I'll have some solutions. We'll talk about some solutions that will actually help grow the entire profession, push the entire profession forward if we would just incorporate some of these things. But it's not for everybody. Just isn't.
So let's start with how we can help the optometrists out there face this problem, are we telling them to do what you and your office manager did?
I'm glad
just
you brought
drop
that.
all insurance all at once? What's the first thing we're going to tell them?
We're going to tell them that you need to sit down and just decide, is this my life going forward or not? And no, okay. I wouldn't suggest this for most everybody, because it's a difficult thing to go through, and you've got to be specially positioned if you get to that point. There's doctors who've done this.
Right.
Okay, but this isn't for everybody. But I think you can grow a specialty practice alongside a vision care plan practice very easily. I think you can do that. And then you can make that special, then you can have it's going to make you more independent. It's going to make you more successful, because you're going to have a different source of income. You don't have to worry about these if they cut your reimbursements again, or they pay you less for services, because you've got this other thing flowing through your practice, so you don't really need them as much anymore. That's where I want these doctors to be semi-independent of them, so they don't have to feel like they have to see 40,000 patients a day to survive, 10 minutes each patient, and they're there to almost, God knows how long that's to deal with this, not getting paid properly. No.
But if I could play devil's advocate for a second here, Cary, how are they supposed to make that change then? Because insurance plans are providing me, if I'm an optometrist today, insurance plans are providing me with patients. They're bringing in patients.
That's why they do it. Right.
So how am I supposed, I'm busy from, morning to end of day. Yeah. How am I supposed to then create more time in an already busy schedule for specialty care patients that aren't on insurance, that are providing a new source of income as part of your strategy? How am I supposed to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. First off, you can use your vision care plan source of patients as a way to build your specialty practice, because they're walking through your door each time. But in order to do that, you're going to have to allot time for this. And you're going to have to be able to step aside and say, this one day a week is going to be specialty care, start out with, or half a day, or whatever it is you want to do, where you're going to take this and tell your staff, I'm not going to book patients this is going to be open, leave it open. Okay. And I'm going to do only specialty care patients during that day. And in the meantime, there's a strategy and plan where you actually work up, and there's going to be different ways you do this. I mean, I'm well with the specialty contact lens path and the myopia path. Those are my, computer vision. Those are my big things. But there's other places to go here. Vision training. There's medical practice. There's all kinds of
dry eye. Yeah.
Dry eye, very successful. So, I mean, you can then, and dry eye doctors are doing this. They're doctors practicing dry eye especially are doing this intentionally, that they're taking these patients aside from when they diagnose them with the vision care, and then they're saying, what, we need to deal with this. This isn't going to be covered under this plan, but we need to make an appointment for you to come back, and we're going to do a workup. So simply doing that, is an excellent way and a necessary way, and a way of all the success that comes from this leads to that path. They're going to have to decide that, the time that I have to do vision care plans is going to be this, and that's not going to be any bigger than this ever. This is where it's going to be. And then this is going to be the part of my practice where it's going to be dry eye, or it's going to be medical, or it's going to be whatever it is.
Right.
And this is where I'm going to grow this. And then you're going to look for each patient walks through the door, like you look for a dry eye patient or anyone else vision training, if it is vision training or myopia, and you're going to set them aside and start, directing them towards this specialty part of your practice, which is separate from the vision plan side. So you use the vision plan side. And eventually what happens, Matt, is you get so big at this, you start hiring associates. God bless you too, because you need to put young optometrists to work. Let them do that crazy stuff for a while until they figure it out. And then you're there doing your specialty part of your practice. In fact, the practice that I'm working at now, it's a multi-doctor practice, and we brought on a young gal who's really awesome and tremendous. She's going to grow with us. And she's going to do some of that for them so that they can practice more of what they do, which each one of the doctors has this defined specialty that they love to do, and they're going to do more of it. And so we cover in that practice with now 4 doctors, we're covering a lot of ground. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
We got, a lot of you're checking off a lot of boxes with what's going on at our practice today.
Right.
So, the thing is, but you talked about it earlier with Chris and I sitting down and then going over this stuff. That's what has to happen. You have to really define and back in here and say, this is what I'm going to do. And even if that day you don't have anybody showing, what we used to do was we used to go to the local Chinese school or whatever it was, the PTA, whatever group it was that we could get in front of and talk. About what we do, So if we had free time, that's how we used our free time. We went out and talked to people. Heck, we used to, the UPS guy would come in and we'd tell him what we do, to discuss this stuff. There's no one that's not a lost conversation with anybody, just to explain, things that you're doing.
I mean, what you're getting at is ultimately, if you could, just to simplify what you're saying, is you have to talk about what it is you are doing. Once you make that decision to start doing specialty care, whether it's dry eye or VT or myopia, you have to actually talk about what you do. Because here's my other point of pushback for you, Cary, is that let's say I'm an optometrist. I've decided to do specialty care. I put off this whole other time of day, an afternoon, later in the week, or whatever the case may be. And those spots are open, and there's a lot of pressure to be like, oh, so-and-so needs an appointment right away. Well, I could fit them in right away here and get paid at least a little bit for it. Should we avoid that, or should we just? Okay, why? Because I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen is I've been like, what happened to myopia day? I thought we talked about this. And they said, well, such and such, patient needed an appointment last minute. We had the slot, so we took it. So what is your reaction to that?
What I'm saying for our doctors is don't be that way. Right. You're going to be carving out. You're going to be in demand. Patients are going to want to come and see you for what you do. Well, then act like it. Set the time aside to be that person. We haven't even talked about this, but let's say you're whatever it is you're going to, dry myopia. You should be attending conferences in those free times. Educating yourself, taking your staff to these things. Close the practice. I just mentioned my practice wasn't available for patients 1/3 of the year. And I had as big a practice as anybody as far as, I didn't see as many pages as everybody else did, but I had the income, because it's very profitable, right? So that's what you need to do for yourself. I mean, eventually you're going to have an idea. What do I want in life? Can I do this 10,000 patients, a day or whatever it is, you're doing? Can I do that? How long can I do that, before I burn out? That's the question you should be asking. And so then I know the answer to that is, I don't like doing it. I don't want to do it. I can't, I have to spend time with other people because they're human beings. I have to give them the time. So I have a certain amount of time I need to spend per patient, and I need to fit that into my practice and make it work. And whatever your model is, you can make that work, but it has to take pre-planning. You have to sit down there with your staff and, go and then go to the conferences, get the accreditation, do the things you need to do to become that best dry eye specialist. Have the equipment available, whatever it is, that you're going to be doing for that purpose. You got to be deliberate. You got to be intentional. You're going to have to just swallow it up and say, you know what? This has got to happen for me in my practice. I've got to, in order to do this, then I need to do this. And the staff follows. They watch you, what you're doing, and they take cues from that. So you got to be, follow through with this.
Right. And part of that deliberate, intentional aspect, to kind of piggyback what you're saying, if you have that day or that afternoon put aside for specialty care and you are filling it with stuff that shouldn't be there, that just becomes the default state. If that's an option, then that's what's going to happen, because in the beginning, it's difficult to start building this. So there's going to be some empty space there. You're just going to have to accept that exists. So if the fallback option is always to fill that spot, then your staff, the rest of your team are going to follow that lead. They're going to be like, well, we could put an appointment here. Doctor said it's okay if we don't have anything else there. Well, then all of a sudden that just becomes a regular day again. Eventually, it'll happen a lot sooner than you think. I've watched it happen. Right. And the other thing I wanted to say about what you just mentioned, when it comes to staff, is like staff. A lot of them, most of the staff that I've worked with, are very smart. They know what's happening in the office. They may have a better idea of what's happening in that office than the doctor does. They see it from all different angles. They spend more time with the patients than the doctor does. So if you're like, hey, I haven't liked how things have gone and I want to change things up, and here's why, and I want you to be a part of it, if you've got staff that are worth it, are invested, they will follow your lead because they're burnt out. They're on the phone all the time. They're constantly making glasses adjustments. They're constantly dispensing lenses. They're constantly, running around like crazy in these super busy practices. Or there's so many staff members that they understand the stress that it entails. So you have to lead that practice. You have to say, we need to do things differently, and here's what I want to do with it. And if you make filling those empty slots an option, that's always going to be the go-to option. You have to make it a sacred space. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And what you can do is, if you let's say if you have a spot that you have a spot that's dead, there's nothing in there, take the time to do the staff education during those times, or fit a staff member, in our case with ortho care, solve a dry eye problem with the staff member, or whatever it is.
Right.
Do a VT workup. Do what you need to do. Keeping them involved, and the theme.
Right.
Again, the theme.
Yeah. To your point, if you're a myopia specialty, I can speak to this directly, as obviously you can as well. But as somebody who was staff, what did we do when we didn't have any patients? Get on the topographer, start learning how to do it, sit as a subject, go in detail about INR, teach them how to talk about, here are the talking points. Do you feel comfortable with that? How would you want to say it? If somebody throws a question at you, what are we going to do? When you pick up the phone and somebody says, do you guys do ortho K? You got to be able to answer that question. Here's what you're going to say. There's plenty of work you can do with your staff
cold calling
in those moments.
Cold calling.
Yeah,
you do that
for sure.
Designing pamphlets or brochures, improving your presentation, doing what you need. Again, fine tuning. What we found also to increase our patient load, and especially care, is we went in specific areas like I said, mentioned the Chinese school area. We got to talk to our patients and said, well, what's it take to get in there? And then we did. So we would spend time on a part of a Saturday, which is a very busy day for us in a specialty care practice, take it off and go in front of these parents to talk about what you're doing.
But that's one of the biggest problems is why optometrists don't know how to advocate for the specialness of what they do, their own special niche, their specialty practice, right?
There's a feeling like the patients should there's a group of us who feel like the patients just should come to them.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're the greatest things in sliced
because
bread.
They are, though. Insurance is bringing the patients to you, so of course they should just come to you, right?
But that's, in those days, we put the shingle out there and we had to go and get patients, So how would you do that? You promote yourself. You go around. Sometimes I remember, in Archery Avenue, my dad's on Archery Avenue, we'd go across to some of the stores and just start talking to people. We weren't that busy, going down the street and discussing with different businesses, what we're up to, what we're doing, They had the Archery Avenue big store at the time. We did things. We promoted what it was. And then, they advertised. There's nothing wrong with that. There's different ways of advertising today that doctors can promote themselves. But the thing is, when you're going to do that, get the background that you need in the specialty you're going to do. Whether it's dry eye or medical or whatever it is, get that background that you need to talk about it. Get the special accreditations. I think those are awesome. So those kinds of things are helpful, but there's always something to do, if you have a doctor who feels like I should just have the patient come to me, I'm going to sit in the chair until they're going to, you're going to get what you're getting. I mean, because it's you're in order to do that, you're paying someone else a lot of money, an obscene amount of money. You're paying them. You're taking discounted fees because of that to get patients into your chair. Is that really what you want to do? Do you really want to do all the $40 examinations you can possibly do?
And are they quality patients?
That's right.
Right? Are they just going to come in and get their script and then go online and get their glasses and contacts?
The key thing here with this stuff is it gets really bad because the insurance is telling them it doesn't matter. Your experience is going to be the same, whoever you're going to see. I can assure you, it's not the same. We do different examinations. But they don't want to admit to that because that blows the model. The model is a generic. McDonald's. Okay, they don't make the best hamburgers here. They're not, in some cases, not very inexpensive either. And they're not very healthy for you. Why are they successful? Because they give you the same experience no matter where you go in. It could be in New Mexico, could be in Chicago, Illinois, it could be in New York City. It's the same exact experience. And people will pay for that, to get that. So what do you do in your case? I always had fun with this with the patients because my goal would be to make them uncomfortable because they come in and they think they know everything. They know my game, and my first thing to do was to cut out from underneath them any kind of support they thought they had for that by throwing things at them and giving them things that they never even thought about. And it's not hard to do because we as doctors don't engage our patients anyway. We don't talk to them. We don't, even when we're doing exams, even people that we see more often, come again, we say hello, whatever it is. We're still not talking about optometry very much. What we do, the amazing things that we do with optometry. So people in this day and age of internet, everybody's an expert, so what do they need me for? They can go get glasses online or, and I used to do that too. The patient would come and sit in the chair when I was taking insurance and they said, well, I want an AccuView 8.8, -2, whatever. I said, hey, you don't need me. Just go wherever you have to go. They're 1-800, whatever it is. Order some lenses up. You don't need me for this. I'm a doctor. If you want your eyes checked and want me to give an evaluation of your vision and give you the best prescription I feel is good for you, then that's different. But so people would walk out on me, and I would invite them to because I said, "There's no point here. You don't. You really want a doctor. You want this. You want a certain kind of the McDonald's experience. That's what you want." And I'm not a McDonald's experience, okay? It's just it's not how I practice. So you have to decide, is this something you want to do? You want to go on that vision care plan program and be a generic, McDonald's every time this patient walks in. It doesn't matter if they see you or see Joe Fly down the street, next. They're all going to get the same exam, the same treatment. That's what you want. Fine. You should don't listen to this podcast. There's no turn it off right now. Do something else,
Yeah.
Because this is not for you. But if you're someone who really wants the best that we can offer, really wants to do that for their patients and be appreciated for doing that, because that's an education too, to teach the patient how to appreciate you. Okay. We can talk about that. They'll take an entire podcast to talk about that. But yes, if you want to be appreciated, who doesn't, want to be respected, right?
Right.
Then listen on, because this is what we're talking about, man. This is the sweet spot.
Let's close on, you wanted to talk about the future of optometry, because the question for this episode is, can optometrists survive in the insurance marketplace? So what do you think the future holds in store for us?
Like I said before, when we were talking about this thing and the history, and Alan and I really worked at this thing for a while to try to get this happening. And, we had some successes and failures, but I thought about this a lot. It's not a total picture, but I think it would be something that would really be a wow thing for optometry. I think it would really click so many buttons and check off so many marks. It's not a total prescription though. It's going to be, but its impact will have a very desirable effect on all of us. For some of us, not everybody will benefit from this. The McDonald's experience, they'll have to just deal. But the thing is, okay, as a profession, we have ophthalmology, and ophthalmology has specific board certification. And when I say board for certification, people are going to think about AOA, what they went through back in the day and I'm not talking about that kind of board certification. So let's just dismiss that right away. But ophthalmology's got, there are different specialties that are demarcated, whatever it is, glaucoma, anterior segment, retina. And they go through board certification where they're actually trained. They actually go away for whatever time it takes to do that, train under the best people in the field to do that. It's time. They put the time in and they get trained. I'm talking about that for optometry in our specialties. I'm talking about doing that as an optometrist to recognize specialty care. In a lot of states, they won't even let you advertise specialty care because doctors of optometry they want to do everything. And you can't do everything because there's just that's good news. Yeah. Because it's good news, bad news, because the scope of the field is so big. There's no way, man. I mean, I could do glaucoma. There's no way I'm doing glaucoma in my practice, man. I'm referring that thing out. Okay, I haven't done enough glaucoma patients recently. That's not what I do. I'm referring that to another doctor, hopefully an optometrist that does glaucoma, right? that we're doing, making strictly. So I think recognizing this profession, finally doing board certification correctly, which is going to take a lot of movement here, because we as optometrists are, we want to be known as being able to do everything. And that OD degree, I can do everything. But that's not the way we should be thinking about. We should be thinking about doing several things well and then referring out for the other things. So I want us to move towards that board certification thing in a big way and in the right way. Training in school, everything else, whatever you need to do to get that done, and dedicate time and effort to that, taking tests and accreditation. The other thing is then opening that up then to the fact that we can become, we recognize specialties in our field. People do this. They have this specialty recognition. And then OD to OD referral because of that. Mm-hmm. In other words, that VT patient that deserves to be seen by a VT specialist instead of me, because I'm probably going to not even pick up the conversion insufficiency, needs to be referred out. Can you imagine all the additional referrals we're missing that will then be taken care of to fellow ODs?
Yeah.
It will instantly increase the profession, maybe 50 to 100% in its scope, because it will put these patients back out there again, and all those misdiagnoses that we do very well as optometrists will then be taken care of.
Right.
So that's my, what I've come down to at the point where I can, I think that would impact that would be a beautiful thing. It would be the opposite of what's happening with the vision care plans, because it would be increasing scope, would be increasing the fees that doctors even get from these things, because they'll actually be doing things, but doing things because they need to be done, and then getting paid for that. The things are actually being missed right now. Right. So let's not do everything anymore as a profession. Let's just do what we need. And there's the huge space there for just general optometry. I don't mean to use even the word just. There's a huge space for optometry as a generally practiced optometry, where that becomes the scope goes out and you start referring patients out that you see and diagnose through those days. If you want to do that, that's great. But I'm saying that there's a significant share of growth here in specialty care that we are missing. So.
Yeah. To quote Paul Levine, the lack of OD to OD referrals is the biggest crime in optometry today. Yeah. And I couldn't agree with him more. I think it was very eloquently put. All right. Well, hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode, listener. I'm going to do some selling right now. I know you enjoyed the episode because this is the end and you've made it this far. And I want you to consider supporting the Myopia Mindset. This is my sole gig. This is what I'm passionate about in life. I want to spread the word about specialty eye care, specifically myopia management, because I think it's the greatest thing in the world. And I think in general, if we can have more optometrists doing specialty eye care, we are going to make the world a better place. So I would like you to consider supporting the Myopia Mindset. You can do so at myopiamindset.com. If you enjoyed what we're talking about, send this to one of your colleagues. If you're an associate at a practice, be like, this is what we need to do to change. These guys get it. We should be doing this. The world of specialty eye care is incredible. It'll reinvigorate who you are as an optometrist. Then we want to help you get there. Myopiamindset.com is how you find out more information. Cary, once again, thank you so much. And for everybody else, we will see you on the next one.